What is the Elder Blood, and why is it the most dangerous gift in the Witcher's world? Born of elven design, passed through generations, and destined to either save or destroy entire worlds, this power flows into one final heir, Cirilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon Ciri. But who carried it before her? Why does the Wild Hunt chase it? Why does Emperor Emhyr desire it? And why is it the only hope against the White Frost? In this video, we will trace the full story of the Elder Blood, from Lara Dorren to Ciri's destiny, and ask one final question. If Ciri becomes a Witcher in the next game, will her Elder Blood make her unstoppable, or will it become her greatest weakness? What if I told you that one of the most dangerous powers in the Witcher's world wasn't born from curses, demons, or some forgotten god, but from elves tinkering with bloodlines? That's right. Long before Geralt roamed the continent, a group of elven sages, known as the Ansavern, were quietly running a magical breeding program. Their goal was bold, maybe even insane. They wanted to create a child capable of opening the gate of the worlds, Ardgeith, and command powers beyond anything the continent had ever seen. Not exactly your usual nursery rhyme material. The elves weren't doing this for fun. They believed the survival of their race depended on it. After the conjunction of the spheres, elves found themselves stranded alongside humans, monsters, and all sorts of unwelcome neighbors. They had lost much of their dominance, and the future looked grim. So the sages placed their faith not in diplomacy or war, but in blood itself. If they could craft the perfect heir, a child who could bend time and space, they might restore the elves' supremacy. And here's the kicker. They didn't just rely on their own magic. They tapped into the primal power of unicorns, mysterious beings who could walk between worlds. By weaving this essence into elven bloodlines, the sages hoped to forge something entirely new. A bloodline with the keys to creation itself. The most famous result of this experiment was Lara Dorren, an elven sorceress of extraordinary ability. She was meant to be the crown jewel of the Elder Blood project, the living embodiment of centuries of scheming. But, as fate or irony would have it, Lara didn't follow the script. Instead of fulfilling the elves' expectations, she fell in love with a human mage, Crigenin of Lode. Imagine the scandal. The sages had spent generations fine-tuning her destiny, and she just tossed it aside for romance. Now, depending on who tells the tale, this was either a tragic mistake or a defiant act of freedom. The elven elite saw it as betrayal. They had planned for her to produce heirs that would carry the Elder Blood in its purest form. Instead, Lara chose love over legacy, mixing her carefully engineered lineage with human blood. The result was a half-elven child, and with it, the shattering of the elves' carefully laid plans. Some call Lara's story one of the greatest romances in the Witcher's world. Others call it the single biggest disaster in elven history. Either way, her choice changed everything. What was meant to be a weapon of elven supremacy became a gift that slipped beyond their control. A gift destined to reappear centuries later in a form no one could have predicted. But this bloodline wasn't just about politics or magical genetics. It was tied to something much larger, prophecy. Long before Lara was born, the legendary seer Ithlin spoke of a child of the Elder Blood. This child would rise in the time of need, saving the elves from annihilation and guiding the world through the terror of the White Frost. If you haven't heard of it yet, the White Frost wasn't just a bad winter. It was a cosmic apocalypse, a frozen death creeping across worlds, unstoppable by ordinary magic or steel dot. So now the stakes were higher than ever. The elves believed that somewhere in Lara's descendants would be the one child who could stop the end of everything. The Elder Blood wasn't just a weapon, it was destiny itself. That's the thing about prophecy, It isn't neat, it isn't controllable, and it tends to make people do crazy things. Whole kingdoms would rise and fall trying to claim this power. and Lara's single act of defiance set the chaos in motion. By the way, if you're enjoying this journey into Witcher lore, now's a perfect time to hit that subscribe button. That way you'll catch the rest of this saga as we unravel how the Elder Blood travels from Lara Dorren all the way to Ciri, and why it's the most coveted magic in the continent. But before we get to Ciri, we need to ask a simple question. What happened to Lara's bloodline after her? Who inherited this gift, and how did it survive long enough to reach Cintra's lion cub? The family tree of Elder Blood is messy, tragic, and full of political backstabbing. And we're just about to climb right into it. So, what happened after Lara Dorren? Her forbidden romance with Cregennan of Lode was supposed to end the elves' carefully crafted plan. Yet somehow, the Elder Blood didn't vanish. It threaded its way through the centuries, weaving into new generations, hiding in family trees, and resurfacing when the world least expected it. The strange thing is, very few names stand out, but each one carries enormous weight in the prophecy's long journey. The first notable figure after Lara was Ciatal. She was a half-elf and the direct daughter of Lara Dorren and Cregennan. In her veins ran the very first mixture of Elder Blood with human heritage. Unfortunately, her story was brief and tragic. She died young, and so her line never had the chance to rise in power. Yet her existence proved that Lara's choice hadn't erased the Elder Blood. It had only changed its path. Generations later, the blood resurfaced in Rhiannon, one of the most fascinating figures in this entire saga. Rhiannon was a human woman, a descendant of Ciatal, and she became central to Elder Blood's survival. But Rhiannon's life was anything but peaceful. She was kidnapped by a madman, imprisoned, and forced into a horrifying existence. Despite her suffering, she bore children, and those children carried the Elder Blood forward. Without Rhiannon's survival, the line might have ended there. The entire prophecy could have been lost in some forgotten dungeon. From Rhiannon came Fiona, her daughter. Fiona represents the continuation of this fragile but powerful bloodline, though history remembers little of her compared to her mother. It's worth noting that Fiona was raised apart from her mother's torment, which may have preserved the Elder Blood's potential in her descendants. Fiona's branch would eventually tie into royal houses, quietly planting the seeds for future claimants to power. Fast forward to Pavetta, the princess of Cintra and Ciri's mother. Pavetta is where things get interesting. Unlike many carriers before her, Pavetta's powers were not just a rumor or a footnote. At her betrothal feast, she unleashed a violent magical storm that nearly destroyed the hall. This was Elder Blood at work, raw and uncontrolled. For the first time in centuries, the prophecy's power was visible, undeniable, and terrifying. Pavetta herself might not have fully understood it, but it made her daughter Ciri the most hunted girl on the continent. Of course, we can't skip Calanthe, Pavetta's mother and the lioness of Cintra. While Calanthe was part of the line, she herself didn't manifest Elder Blood powers in the same way. She was fierce, cunning, and politically ruthless, but her strength came from steel and strategy rather than prophecy. Still, by securing her daughter Pavetta's future, Calanthe unknowingly safeguarded the continuation of Elder Blood. Even as Nilfgaard and the Northern Kingdom circled like wolves. Now, here's a curious twist. While true Elder powers seemed to bloom only in the female line, male descendants were not irrelevant. Men like Corbett and Dagorad carried what scholars call latent or activator genes. Their presence in the family tree allowed the bloodline to keep mutating and reawakening in later generations. In simpler terms, they didn't shoot fire from their hands or tear holes in reality, but their blood carried hidden switches that could be flipped when mixed with the right partner. Without them, the prophecy would have fizzled out, and then the debates begin. Some fans argue over whether figures like Alvin, the mysterious child with uncanny abilities in the first Witcher game, or even Oberon, the elven king Ciri meets in another world might be tied to the elder bloodline. The evidence is murky, the sources contradictory. The books never confirm it, while the games toy with the possibility. These ambiguities remind us that elder blood is as much a legend as it is lineage. Another complication is that our records are incomplete. Genealogies in the Witcher's world are messy. Wars burn libraries, kings rewrite history, and family trees vanish into ashes. Could there have been other carriers whose names are simply lost to time? Almost certainly, and that uncertainty fuels the mystique of elder blood. After all, if one forgotten girl somewhere carried the gift, what might have happened if her power had awakened? Would we even know her story? The thing is, every step in this bloodline feels fragile, like the prophecy could have ended at any moment. A death here, a marriage there, and history would have shifted completely. Yet somehow it kept flowing, surviving calamities, betrayals, and accidents, until it reached Pavetta and her daughter Ciri. The odds of that survival alone make the prophecy feel less like destiny and more like inevitability. So, when you look at this tangled family tree, one question naturally arises. Was the elder blood truly guided by fate, as Ithlin's prophecy declared, or was it simply a genetic lottery that happened to survive through luck and stubborn descendants? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate cuts to the very heart of whether the elder blood is divine destiny, or just good old-fashioned chaos. And speaking of chaos, our next step is to understand why this bloodline mattered so much. Why was it considered the ultimate weapon? The one thing kings, mages, and even otherworldly hunters were willing to fight and die for. Let's dive into the true significance of the elder blood. So, what makes elder blood so terrifying and so irresistible? Why does this single bloodline spark fear in kings, obsession in mages, and desperation in elves? The answer is simple, yet also maddeningly complex. Elder blood is raw potential. It is the key to controlling time, bending space, and stepping between worlds. In the right hands, it could save civilizations. In the wrong ones, it could unravel reality itself. That's the thing. Elder blood isn't just another magical talent, like tossing fireballs or brewing potions. It's on a different level entirely. We're talking about the power to open gateways between dimensions, to alter the flow of history, and even to shape destiny itself. No wonder entire empires would gamble everything just for the chance to control it. But here's the catch. Elder blood is unpredictable. It doesn't come with a user's manual, and it doesn't always manifest the same way. Some carriers live and die without ever realizing what burns inside them. Others, like Pavetta at her fateful betrothal feast, unleash chaos without warning, shaking castles and terrifying witnesses. It's a gift, but one that often looks more like a curse. Imagine holding the keys to creation, but never knowing when they'll twist in your hand and break everything around you. Naturally, this volatility only made elder blood more alluring to those in power. Monarchs dreamed of marrying it into their dynasties, securing heirs who could command the fabric of the world. Mages plotted to study, harness, and weaponize it, treating living descendants like tools in an arcane experiment. To them, elder blood wasn't family or fate. It was a prize, a weapon, the ultimate trump card. And in a land as treacherous as the continent, that kind of asset could decide the outcome of wars before a single sword was drawn. Of course, the elves had their own designs. To them, elder blood wasn't just about politics or conquest. It was about survival. The prophecy of Ithlin promised that this bloodline would save them from annihilation. It gave the elder blood a kind of divine weight, something more than genetics or magic. For the elves, it was hope incarnate. For humans, it was power incarnate. And that tension ensured the bloodline was never left alone. But as with all myths, the story of elder blood didn't stay clean. Over centuries, legends blurred, and people began to conflate elder blood with curses, rebellions, and other prophecies. Take Falco, for instance. She was a notorious rebel and one of the most infamous figures in Northern history, remembered for her violent uprising. Some whispers tie her rage and destruction to elder blood, though lore scholars often argue this is more confusion than fact. Falca's rebellion left scars so deep that generations remembered her name as a curse, and over time, some fans and even in-world storytellers began to mix her legacy with that of the elder line. This confusion is part of what makes elder blood so mysterious. Is it a blessing, a curse, or something in between? The books, the games, and even the fan debates don't always agree. Some see it as destiny incarnate, guided by Ithlin's prophecy. Others see it as nothing more than dangerous genetics, a quirk of breeding that accidentally created godlike abilities. And then there are those who insist it's both, destiny and chance tangled together in a knot no one can untie. What's certain is that elder blood's significance went far beyond the families who carried it. It shaped politics, it fueled wars, and it even inspired terror. Imagine being a king on the continent, constantly paranoid that somewhere out there a child might be born with the power to dethrone you, or worse, to erase your entire kingdom with a scream. That paranoia wasn't just fantasy. It was history. And yet, for all its danger, people still wanted it. Humans wanted to harness it, elves wanted to restore it, and others simply wanted to destroy it before it destroyed them. No matter the perspective, elder blood was never neutral. It was always a catalyst, always the spark that turned fear into action. The irony is, for centuries, no one could truly control it. They could plot, scheme, and marry bloodlines, but in the end, elder blood had a way of surprising everyone. It flared up where no one expected, hid itself for generations, and then erupted at the worst possible moment. Like fate itself was mocking anyone who thought they could master it. And that raises a question I'd love to hear your thoughts on. Do you think elder blood is truly a gift of destiny, meant to save the world, or is it just chaos bottled up in a family tree? Drop your theories in the comments, because the debate over fate versus chance has haunted this bloodline for centuries. And I bet the community has some fascinating takes, because here's the twist. Elder blood wasn't just an abstract force. Eventually, it landed in one girl who embodied all of its chaos and all of its promise. Ciri. And once her powers awakened, the world would never be the same again. But before we dive into her story, we need to understand how exactly elder blood manifests in her veins. That's where the tale truly takes off. Who is the true heir of elder blood? The answer, in both the books and games, is crystal clear. Ciri is the last known carrier of the pure elder line. Her very existence is the culmination of centuries of breeding, prophecy, and desperate scheming. And unlike many of her ancestors, her power doesn't remain dormant. It explodes into the world, raw and terrifying, impossible to ignore. Here's the thing about Ciri's elder blood. It isn't just a magical boost or a little spark of sorcery. It is the full inheritance of Lara Dorren's gift, the living embodiment of what the elven sages once tried to create. In her veins runs the power to rip open the fabric of reality, to travel across space and time, and to glimpse events before they unfold. Ciri is not just another child of destiny. She's destiny given flesh. Of course, when these powers first began to surface, they didn't come wrapped in neat packaging. Take her infamous magic wail, the scream that burst from her during moments of extreme fear or rage. This isn't just a child crying out, it's a sonic detonation, a raw force that can topple buildings and shatter stone. Imagine being in the room when a little girl screams and the very walls around you tremble like paper. That is elder blood. Awakening. But the wail is just the beginning. Ciri's elder powers manifest in ways that make even the most skilled sorcerers uneasy. She slips into visions of the past and future, seeing things no one else can. At times, she vanishes from one place and reappears somewhere else entirely, pulled through invisible gates that even she doesn't fully understand. These accidental leaps between worlds are dangerous, but they reveal her true potential. She is a living key to the multiverse. This potential is exactly why Geralt and Yennefer tried so hard to protect her. In Blood of Elves, Yennefer begins to train Ciri, guiding her through the basics of magic. But here's the catch. Even Yennefer, one of the most formidable sorceresses alive, quickly realizes that Ciri is beyond conventional teaching. The girl's powers aren't spells you can memorize. They are instincts, surges of chaos bound to blood and prophecy. Trying to tame them is like trying to leash a thunderstorm. In time of contempt, this challenge becomes even clearer. Yennefer sees both brilliance and danger in her pupil. Ciri is capable of feats that should take decades to master, but she is also capable of catastrophic mistakes. It's like handing a child a loaded crossbow that can also open wormholes. Every lesson carries risk. Every failure could be fatal, not just for her, but for everyone nearby. And this, perhaps, is what makes Ciri's elder blood so compelling. It is not simply about what she can do, but about what others fear she might do. The Lodge of Sorceresses sees her as a weapon. The Nilfgaardian Emperor sees her as a bride and a tool for dynastic power. The Wild Hunt sees her as the prize that could allow them to conquer new worlds. Everyone wants her, but no one fully understands her. What's fascinating is how her abilities tie directly into Ithin's prophecy. She is the child of the Elder Blood who can stand against the White Frost. But how do you train someone to face an apocalypse? How do you prepare a girl to wield powers that entire civilizations failed to control for centuries? This is the tension that defines Ciri's journey. She is hunted, tested, and often pushed to her breaking point. Yet her power only grows. It is worth noting that even within the lore, not everything about her abilities is neatly explained. The books emphasize her power to move between worlds, while the games expand on her combat prowess and even allow players to glimpse her jumping across time and space. Some fans argue that the games take liberties with how far her abilities stretch, while others see them as a natural extension of Sapkowski's hints. Either way, her elder blood ensures she is always more than a witcher in training. She is a force of nature. Think about it this way. Geralt's strength comes from potions, mutations, and hard-earned skill. Yennefer's magic comes from years of discipline and political cunning. But Ciri's gift? It comes from blood itself, something no teacher, no enemy, no ally can ever take away. That is why she terrifies her enemies and frustrates her allies in equal measure. So here's a thought. If you had Ciri's powers, would you try to master them, or would you fear them? Would you leap between worlds, exploring infinite possibilities? Or would you stay rooted, terrified of breaking everything you touch? That's the impossible choice Ciri faces. And as we'll see in the next chapter, her struggle with power doesn't happen in a vacuum, because there are forces, ancient and relentless, who will stop at nothing to claim the elder blood for themselves. Who are the ghostly riders that freeze the air and send entire villages into panic at the sound of distant hooves? The answer lies not in myth, but in elves. The Wild Hunt, also known as the Red Riders, are not spirits at all. They are the El, a race of elves from another world, led by their ruthless king Erian Briatgalas, and their obsession with Ciri is far darker than the nightmares whispered about them in taverns. Here's the thing. To humans, the Wild Hunt looks like death incarnate, a spectral cavalcade appearing in the sky before disasters. But in truth, they are raiders from another sphere, slipping through fragile cracks between worlds. They are conquerors with one simple problem. After the conjunction of the spheres, their kind lost easy passage between realms. And without a way to travel freely, their empire began to stagnate. For the Anel, Ciri's elder blood is the solution. Eredin knows that Ciri's power is unique. She is not just another sorceress with a knack for portals. She carries the genetic key to Ardgeith, the great gate of worlds, once the crown jewel of elven mastery. Through her, the Anel could reclaim what they lost and resume their domination of countless realms. To them, she is not a girl. She is a door, and doors are meant to be opened. Now, here's where the lore takes an interesting turn. In Sapkowski's books, the Wild Hunt is more mysterious, appearing briefly as a terrifying force that abducts people and leaves devastation in its wake. In the Tower of the Swallow, Ciri is captured by the Hunt, dragged into their world, and confronted with the chilling reality that she is their prize. But the details are sparse. The games, particularly The Witcher 3, expand massively on this, painting Eredin as a major antagonist and the Hunt as a relentless, otherworldly army. Some fans debate whether the games exaggerated their role, transforming spectral raiders into near-apocalyptic villains. But even in the books, their motives are clear enough. They want Ciri's elder blood, not just for curiosity, but for survival. Without her, their people are trapped. With her, they can ride again between worlds, claiming lands and enslaving others, just as they once did. It is empire dressed in myth, conquest disguised as haunting. And it's not just about power. There's fear in the Hunt too. Imagine being part of a once proud race that knew the pathways of infinity, now reduced to raiding across unstable cracks. Like bandits. The Anel see Ciri as a way back to glory, a chance to restore what was lost. And in their eyes, one girl's freedom means little against the fate of an entire race. Ruthless pragmatism, wrapped in elven arrogance. But there's something almost poetic about how their legend evolved. Humans who saw them from afar believed they were wraiths, omens of war and famine. Stories turned them into harbingers of doom, phantoms that could not be fought. In a way, this worked to the Hunt's advantage. Fear became their weapon, a psychological blade as sharp as any sword. Even Geralt himself admits that facing them feels like facing inevitability. And yet, despite their terrifying presence, they are not invincible. In both the books and the games, cracks show in their power. They rely on stolen slaves to fuel their raids, dragging captives back to their world to serve as labor or soldiers. They are parasites as much as predators. And that desperation makes them dangerous. Because when an empire starts to rot, it clings harder to whatever chance it is left. This brings us back to Ciri. To the Wild Hunt, she is no longer a child running from her destiny. She is the only being who can give them back their supremacy. That's why they pursue her with such persistence, through frozen wastelands, across battlefields, even into other worlds. They will not stop, because for them, stopping means extinction. Now, here's a thought worth pausing on. The Wild Hunt are villains, sure, but are they entirely wrong? If your entire people were trapped, cut off from the vast cosmos they once roamed, would you not also chase the one key that could free you? It doesn't excuse their cruelty, but it does make them more than monsters. They are a fallen empire, clinging to the last hope of survival, and that's the tragic beauty of their story. They are both hunters and the hunted, chasing Ciri while being chased by their own fading relevance. And as we'll see in the next chapter, they aren't the only ones who see Ciri's elder blood as salvation. Because while the Hunt wants her, To open worlds, Emperor Emhyr wants her for a far more personal reason, one that will shake not only Ciri's destiny, but Geralt's as well. What could possibly drive the most powerful man in the known world to chase after a single girl? Emhyr var Emrys, the white flame dancing on the barrows of his enemies, already ruled the largest empire ever seen. He had armies, riches, and crowns. But to Emhyr, it was not enough. His eyes fell on Cirilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon, known to us as Ciri. And here's the twist. She was not just another pawn in his grand game. She was his own daughter. Long before he became emperor, Emhyr lived under a curse. Known as Duny, the urchin of Erlenwald, his monstrous appearance was broken only by the love of Pavetta of Cintra, daughter of Queen Calanthe. Their union produced Ciri, who carried the elder blood through her mother's line. To outsiders, Emhyr might have seemed like a victim of fate, freed by love. But the truth is that his ambitions ran deeper than any fairy tale ending. When Pavetta died at sea under suspicious circumstances, Emhyr's story took a darker turn. Now the Emperor of Nilfgaard, he saw in Ciri not only his daughter, but the ultimate key to power. Through her, he could bind Cintra to Nilfgaard without endless rebellion. But more than politics, her elder blood offered something far greater, a chance to shape the future itself. Here's where things get disturbing. In Sapkowski's novels, Emhyr's plan becomes shockingly clear. He intends to marry Ciri, his own child, and conceive a son who would embody the prophecy of Ithlen. That child would be born of elder blood, destined to rule over a reborn world. It's a plan that makes Emhyr one of the coldest, most calculating figures in fantasy literature. To him, morality was irrelevant. Destiny, dynasty, and power were all that mattered. And yet, Emhyr is not a simple villain. At the castle of Stygia, where he finally corners Ciri, he relents. He abandons his plan, lets her go, and allows fate to spin in another direction. Why? Was it guilt? A flicker of paternal feeling, or simply a recognition that his scheme had failed? Sapkowski leaves the answer deliberately unclear. Emhyr's motives remain as shadowed and complex as the man himself. Now, the games take a slightly different route. In The Witcher 3, Emhyr's motives lean harder on political control and dynastic ambition. He seeks Ciri not just as his daughter, but as a ruler in her own right. Someone who could stabilize Nilfgaard's claim to the north. While the incestuous succession plan isn't central in the game, the ambition remains. Emhyr wants a child of elder blood tied to his dynasty, a ruler who could secure his empire's dominance for generations. To add even more intrigue, Emhyr at one point marries a false Ciri, a political pawn presented as the real princess, to cement his claim over Cintra. It shows how far he was willing to go, not just in schemes of war, but in manipulation, deception, and propaganda. To him, the idea of Ciri was almost as useful as the girl herself. So, when we ask why Emhyr sought Ciri, the answer is layered. On one level, it's about Cintra, a jewel he wanted to secure through dynastic ties. On another, it's about prophecy, the chance to bring forth a child of unimaginable destiny. And perhaps on the deepest level, it's about control. The elder blood could save worlds, but Emhyr wanted to chain it, harness it, and make it his legacy. What makes this story so chilling is that Emhyr was not chasing myths or wielding dark magic. He was entirely human, calculating, and pragmatic. The Wild Hunt pursued Ciri for survival, a desperate bid to reclaim their lost freedom. Emhyr pursued her for dominion, the cold ambition of empire. Two very different predators circling the same prey. And yet, at the heart of this story is a question that lingers. Was Emhyr ever truly capable of seeing Ciri as his daughter? Or was she always, in his eyes, the embodiment of a prophecy and a tool for empire? Fans still debate this. Some argue his choice to release her proves he had a shred of humanity left. Others believe it was nothing more than another tactical move. Either way, his motive shaped her destiny. And as we move into the final stretch of this story, we reach the greatest threat of all, the White Frost. Unlike emperors or spectral hunters, this was no political enemy. It was an apocalypse, and Ciri's elder blood was the only thing that could stand against it. What if the end of the world wasn't fire and brimstone, but silence, snow, and endless ice? In the Witcher universe, the true apocalypse has a name whispered in prophecies: the White Frost. It is not a mere winter. It is a cosmic death sentence, a creeping annihilation that even the greatest sorcerers, kings, or elven sages cannot halt. Against that kind of inevitability, only one line of blood was said to hold the key. Ithlin's prophecy made it clear. A child of the elder blood would stand at the crossroads of worlds. When the frost came to consume all life, this child would guide humanity's rebirth on another world, ensuring survival through a new beginning. To elves, it was hope. To humans, it was fear. And to rulers like Emhyr and hunters like Aradin, it was opportunity. But to Ciri, it was destiny, whether she wanted it or not. Here's the thing. In Sapkowski's novels, the White Frost is more of a looming threat, never directly confronted. It's a prophecy, a shadow that hangs over Ciri's life but never comes crashing down. The games, however, give it flesh and ice. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt culminates in a world-shattering moment where the frost begins to bleed into the continent. The sky splits, snowstorms rage, and time itself seems to stop. It is another conjunction of the spheres, the kind that once brought monsters and magic into the world. And there, at the center of it, stands Ciri. No army, no mage, not even Geralt, can fight the White Frost. This battle is hers alone. Using her elder blood, she channels the raw chaos of worlds, tearing open gateways and pushing back the apocalypse. It's not about swords or spells, but the terrifying weight of destiny crashing onto one young woman's shoulders. Now, the game leaves her fate open to us. If Geralt guides her with love and trust, Ciri embraces her destiny, steps into the storm, and becomes the savior Ithlin foretold. She sacrifices her place in the continent to save countless lives. If Geralt fails to prepare her, the frost swallows her, and the prophecy dies with her. And in some endings, she survives to forge her own path, but always with that power burning inside her, a reminder of what she was meant to face. What makes the White Frost so terrifying isn't just its destructive force, but its inevitability. Unlike Nilfgaard's empire or the Wild Hunt's riders, you can't stab winter in the heart. You can't reason with entropy. The only hope lies in something as strange and dangerous as elder blood itself. Which raises a haunting question. Did Ciri truly stop the frost or only delay it? The games never confirm. The prophecy lingers, suggesting that the end has only been postponed, not erased. And that's the beauty of it. Ciri's role is both heroic and tragic, savior in exile. She may have saved her world, but at what cost? Was she reborn? Was she lost? Or is she still walking among us, waiting for the frost to return? That's the uncertainty that keeps this tale alive, and it leads directly to the speculation fans love most and in the upcoming Witcher 4. What becomes of Ciri and her elder blood then? What happens when the storybook ends, but the legend refuses to die? Sapkowski's novels close Ciri's tale in The Lady of the Lake, leaving her fate mysterious. But CD Projekt Red is not done. They've confirmed a brand new Witcher saga. And who sits at the heart of its trailer? Ciri. The girl who ran from destiny may now be destiny itself. But here's the catch. This is uncharted territory. No book canon. No neatly written prophecy. Just Ciri stepping forward as a witcheress. Something we have never seen before. The games have teased it. In one of The Witcher 3's possible endings, Ciri survives the White Frost and chooses the path of the Witcher. She picks up the medallion, takes the contracts, and walks into legend. It's rare in games to give players an ending that could see the whole sequel. But here, CD Projekt laid the groundwork perfectly. And yet, this raises a fiery lore question. Witchers are made through the trial of the grasses, a brutal ritual where mutagens twist body and mind. Historically, women simply don't survive it. So, how could Ciri? That's where Elder Blood rewrites the rules. Her bloodline has survived apocalypses, opened gates between worlds, and broken every law of magic known. If anyone could endure or outright bypass the mutations, it's her. Maybe she doesn't become a traditional witcher at all, but something new, a hybrid, a bridge between the blade and the arcane dot, and that opens the door to speculation on her abilities. Imagine a Witcher 4 where combat doesn't just mean rolling and parrying, but tearing through space itself. Short teleports across the battlefield. A blink strike that lets her appear behind an enemy before they even realize she's gone. Or a split-second pause of time, where her sword arcs forward while the world stands still. These aren't wild guesses. They're natural extensions of what we saw in The Witcher 3, when she cut through time and space in scripted moments. Give that power to the player, and suddenly Witcher combat feels reborn. Of course, the White Frost still looms. The books and games made it clear. Elder Blood is the only counter to that frozen apocalypse. So even if Ciri takes contracts, hunts monsters, and lives the Witcher life, a cosmic threat could come crashing back. Picture the tension. A lone witcheress in the mud and rain of a village contract, all while knowing she may also be the only line of defense against the end of worlds. But her story doesn't have to stop with blades and frost. She's a princess by blood, a witcher by choice, and a child of the Elder Blood by destiny. Witcher 4 could explore any of those identities. Maybe she founds a new Witcher school, tied to the Lynx medallion teased in CD Projekt's trailer. Maybe she becomes a queen who still hunts monsters, a ruler who never let go of the path. Or maybe she refuses both crown and institution, carving out a new destiny entirely her own. And that's the thrill of it. There's no single canon left to bind her. Ciri is free, and so is the narrative. Elder Blood gives her the strength to endure the mutagens, the magic to bend space and time, and the legacy to stand as something more than a witcher, maybe the first of an evolved order. But will she embrace that? Or will she try to suppress it, clinging to the ordinary path of the Witcher to stay grounded? So here's the question I'll leave with you. Does Elder Blood make Ciri the first true evolution of the Witcher Order? Faster, stronger, unbound by human limits? Or is it the very thing that will isolate her, making her less Witcher, more sorceress, and perhaps even more dangerous? Let me know your take in the comments, because if Witcher 4 is indeed Ciri's story, then the future of the continent could depend on which version of her we choose to believe in. If you've made it this far and found the video helpful, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It would be a great help, and I would really appreciate it. Thanks a ton for watching. Until next time, take care.